President Trump, meanwhile, is threatening to end subsidies from Congress and insurers in light of the failure of Republicans to yet again get a health care alternative out there. To Florida Republican Congressman Ron DeSantis. Congressman, always good to have you. I think what the president is saying is if this is the pudding, you have to eat it. You guys have to eat it. What do you think?
Amen. Neil, these subsidies are not lawful to begin with. I've been opposed to them from the beginning. This goes back 4 years. I did not take any subsidies out of principle because I don't think they're lawful. Obama did this with Reid and Pelosi. It's an administrative rule. The president can absolutely simply rescind it, and then it would do what that original Grassley amendment to Obamacare was supposed to do: make Congress live under the same law they imposed on everybody else. And I think that if you did that and you didn't give them the cushion of a special subsidy, I think some members may have a different view on whether we actually finally need to get this Obamacare repealed.
He's still held up to making sure it is repealed. How likely is that? Or is there a point at which, Congressman, you get where, all right, you keep going back to the well and nothing happens?
Well, the U.S. Senate, they had many of those members have run for years and years saying they were going to repeal and replace it. You had 6 senators who voted to repeal last Congress, vote against that identical piece of legislation this Congress a couple days ago. And to just walk away from it and pocket your subsidies, I think that's totally unacceptable.
And they can't come together. No, even the threats against the Alaska Senator McCarthy and others, it doesn't seem to register. What do you make of that?
Well, we have 45 to 46 senators, I think, have been willing to vote for a variety of repeal measures. And so I think that's the solid base. And you got to figure out a way to get to 50. I'm not saying you threaten people. I think that's got to be done by the Senate leadership. The president can get involved, and they just got to figure it out. But I just don't know how any of them who ran on repeal can just look in the mirror and say, forget about everything I've said for the last 7 years, and then just kind of move on. I just don't think that cuts it.
But apparently they feel comfortable rolling the dice, right? If you're Lisa Murkowski, you're not up for another 5 years. If you're Susan Collins and maybe you run for governor in 4 years, you're not immediately threatened, and you're not clearly intimidated. So John McCain's his own story that he's pretty much the maverick he's always been, and he'll do whatever the heck he wants to do. But what do you do? The majorities, I know you're in the House, I understand, but you've got very little wiggle room there. So what does the president, what do leaders there do? Or do they just say, let's proceed to tax cuts and forget this nonsense?
Well, I think that the threat of electoral retribution is one thing, but I think the fact of the matter is, if you've made these promises, people should want to continue those promises. I just don't understand how you can just have made those statements, issued these tough press releases, taken all these votes, and now just been like, hey, sorry, we got to move on. So I think some of those senators would have a tough time answering questions about why they've all of a sudden done a 180.
I fully agree with that, because some of them, except for Susan Collins, who was consistent, she rejected the same kind of thing, back in 2015. They don't have any accountability at the polls for a while yet. So I guess what I'm asking you is, given that, and given the dynamics, and given that even a skinny repeal effort that was marginal in its approach couldn't pass, is it fair to go on to taxes, and if so, when?
Well, we should be working on taxes as well. You can walk and chew gum. What I would say with Obamacare is that I think some of those members were concerned about what the conference would do because they didn't know. So I understand that. So the question is what do you need to do, kind of starting from scratch in the sense you don't have to work off the McConnell bill or the House bill. What do you need to have to get to yes? And then is that palatable with the other 45, 46 senators? So you can do it. It just requires a lot of work. It requires you to stay in Washington a little longer. And we are working on taxes. The border adjustment tax was pulled out the other day, which I think really clears the way for us to be able to succeed.
When do you think that's going to get done, Congressman, the tax thing?
Well, I would like to see some legislative text when we come back in September and hopefully vote it out in September, October. I'm not saying that's going to happen because...
Do you want it retroactive at the beginning of the year, or is it too late for that?
No, I think it has to be retroactive. That'll give us a nice bump in the economy going into 2018.
All right, Congressman, we'll see what happens. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.